All right, so move on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my fight summary on the fight that took place last night in the sport of boxing between Brian Norman Jr. and Devin Haney. So in the co-main event of the Ring Night of Champions card, you had Devin Haney defeat Brian Norman Jr. by unanimous decision to become the new WBO welterweight champion in the co-main event of the Ring Night of Champions card. So I'll be sharing my fight summary that took place in the co-main event last night in the sport of boxing. Honestly, I apologize, Devin Haney. I was not familiar with your game, and I thought the old Devin Haney was done and put to rest. He had a good performance last night against Brian Norman Jr. I scored it 8 rounds to 4 in favor of Devin Haney. I give him credit for the second round knockdown. I did not see that coming. And it was a nice right hook followed with a straight punch that dropped and wobbled Brian Norman Jr., scoring the knockdown and gave Devin Haney all the confidence in the world. And I don't think Brian Norman Jr. properly adjusted or got his mindset back into the fight, because there's 12 rounds in a fight and you don't lose based off a knockdown. But I don't think Brian Norman Jr., with the inexperience, could have bounced back after that. So the first half of the fight was exciting. Then the second half of the fight was a snooze fest and a clinch fest. Both Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr. were clinching each other. As I was watching the fight, I didn't know if Turkey Al-Sheikh fell asleep at ringside. Connor Benn and Eddie Hearn clearly weren't entertained. But if the fight was as entertaining as the first round or first half of the fight, it would have been up there with one of the best performances of the night, with Abdullah Mason and Sam Noquez, and what Bam Rodriguez did in his fight, and David Benavidez, Anthony Yard. Second half of the fight was garbage. But as the fight went on, Devin Haney was the more aggressive fighter. He could have honestly put on a better show and went for the knockout victory if he didn't play it safe against Brian Norman Jr. Overall, I think Devin Haney was the smarter fighter, more polished fighter, landed more significant shots, great counter punching, great at landing combinations and flurries, and he handicapped Brian Norman Jr. of his best attributes, and that's landing the power shots as the fight went on. But I do give Devin Haney credit here, though. He landed more power shots on Brian Norman Jr. And the more you watch him, he doesn't have the knockout power, but he has the skills and that stiff jab to keep his opponents off of him. And he does have that type of power that you got to respect, because it's that sneaky power. Not the power to end a fight, but it's the power to keep his opponents off of him. And we've seen that a little bit at 135, a little bit at 140 when he scored the knockdown against Regis Progress, and we just saw it at 147 when he scored the knockdown against Brian Norman Jr. So after that, like I said a few moments ago, I feel like Brian Norman Jr. lost his confidence. He lost his spark. He wasn't as aggressive. He looked a little bit slower against Devin Haney, which I thought he would have been not much faster, but it would have been a little bit more closer in the speed department, with Haney making his debut at this division. Brian Norman Jr. has been comfortable at 147 for some time now, former world champion. But you can tell as the fight went on, the flaws in the footwork were a problem for Brian Norman Jr. He couldn't fight in different lateral movements, which in the game plan for him last week, I said that would have been very important for him to fight in different lateral movements. The footwork really wasn't a factor, and he just fought coming forward. Didn't fight in different angles, just the same bread and butter, trying to walk down Devin Haney, fight coming forward. That wasn't good enough. I didn't see enough adjustments for him to make it a dramatic second half for him to possibly have a comeback or make it more dramatic on the judges' scorecards. Overall, I will give Devin Haney his credit, but out of the 4 fights on the main card, I think this was the least entertaining from my perspective compared to how the other fights played out. Again, Abdullah Mason and Sam Noquez, that's in the conversation for Fight of the Year, what they did at lightweight for the vacant WBO title. That was a special fight. Bam Rodriguez putting it on against Fernando, a.k.a. the Puma, having that knockout victory. Very good performance by him to become a unified champion. David Benavidez scoring the knockout victory against Anthony Yard. You compare the excitement that all 3 of those fights had compared to Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr. That was the most hyped and built-up fight out of the 4 fights on the card. And for a lot of people, probably viewed that as the main event or the prize fight compared to all the other 4 championship fights. It didn't live up to the hype. Again, second half of the fight was a clinch fest, unentertaining, and didn't have the excitement that it had, like the fight had in the first half of the fight. And you look at the copy box stats, I mean, Devin Haney only landed 70 out of 271 punches. That's resulting in a 25.8% of punches landed. Then you look at Brian Norman Jr., 59 out of 399 punches landed, resulting in 14.8 punches landed. You guys tell me. Again, the first half of the fight was fun. The knockdown was great with Devin Haney getting in Brian Norman Jr.'s face. Devin Haney gaining the confidence of old as the fight went on, but then the second half of the fight was just unentertaining from my standpoint and my personal view. But we will give Devin Haney his props and his credit. He is a 3-division world champion. He's on his way to having a great career. Undisputed at 135. We all know the history that he had at lightweight, being a world champion, former WBC champion at 140, and now a 3-division world champion, becoming the new WBO welterweight champion in the sport of boxing. So, to close out the segment, what's next for Devin Haney? So, he is coming off of 2024, which was the roughest year of his boxing career. We all know the story between himself and Ryan Garcia. The fight ended in a no contest with Ryan Garcia testing positive for 2 PEDs, but at the same time, Devin Haney couldn't defend a check left hook to save his life. Took the rest of the year off. Came in 2025, defeated Jose Ramirez, and just defeated Brian Norman Jr. to become a 3-division world champion. So what's next for Devin Haney? He does have options at the welterweight division. Don't get me wrong, he does have options at 147. He could chase the winner of Ryan Garcia and Mario Barrios when they fight for the WBC welterweight championship in February. That could be a fight that Devin Haney possibly wants to get his revenge against Ryan Garcia, and the stakes can be any higher for that highly anticipated rematch. The stories there with their history in the amateurs, what happened in the spring of 2024. Then you have a title unification fight with the WBC possibly be on the line, the WBO titles possibly on the line. Doesn't get much bigger than that. Big money fight is there for Devin Haney to fight Conor Benn, but clearly last night it seems like Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn don't really have true intentions to make that fight against Devin Haney. I think that's a good fight, but I feel like Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn know deep down that it could be a possibility where Devin Haney gets up on the judges' scorecards, that makes it unentertaining and doesn't do anything to jeopardize himself of losing the fight. It makes it boring and unentertaining for the rest of the boxing community to enjoy the fight. And there's also another title unification that could make sense for Devin Haney. That's fighting against the WBA champion Rolly Romero. I think the build-up between Devin Haney and Rolly Romero would be absolutely perfect, but I think that fight honestly goes in a similar way that we just saw last night between Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr. Devin Haney outboxes Rolly Romero, probably scores a knockdown, and then makes it unentertaining for the rest of the fight. So, in my perfect world, I'd probably like to see Devin Haney fight Ryan Garcia in a rematch, in a championship unification fight. I think that's where the money is. I think that could be one of the biggest fights to be made in 2026. But we'll see how things go. But that is my overall fight summary in the fight that took place last night between Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr.